I sat in my truck with a paper cup of black coffee warming my hands. The windshield was fogging at the edges, but I didn't wipe it. I didn't need to. I had a clear line of sight. Two black SUVs rolled up slow and clean in front of the glass building across the street. No sirens, no rush, just quiet authority. I watched the doors open. Men and women stepped out in windbreakers, calm, focused. The kind of people who don't show up unless something has already gone very wrong. I took a sip of coffee. Prison. One of the agents adjusted his jacket and looked up at the building signage. Sterling Tech. But she was about to learn. I leaned back in my seat and let the moment sit. No music, no drama, just timing. 5 weeks earlier, I didn't have this view. I had a taxi receipt and a duffel bag. The driver didn't say much when we pulled into the driveway. Just glanced at me in the mirror, probably wondering why someone in a stiff posture and a military jacket was being dropped off at a place that looked like a magazine cover. White siding, fresh paint, new landscaping, not how I remembered it. I paid him, stepped out, and felt the shift in my spine the second I straightened up. The titanium brace under my jacket didn't let me forget. It held everything in place, rigid, unforgiving, like it was designed by someone who didn't care about comfort. Just structure. It did its job. So did I. 14 months overseas. Last deployment ended with an IED that didn't kill me, but made sure I wouldn't be going back. Medical discharge, honorable, clean record, clean exit. I stood in front of my childhood home with a duffel bag in one hand and a folder in the other. Discharge papers, medical documentation, everything in order. That house was supposed to be simple. My grandfather left it to both of us. Equal split, no confusion, no loopholes. I walked up to the front door and noticed the first problem. New lock. Not just replaced, upgraded. Smart lock. Polished. Expensive. I rang the bell. Footsteps came quick, light, confident. The door opened and there she was, Chloe. Perfect hair, perfect posture, designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly pay when I was active duty. A glass of red wine in her hand, like it was part of her personality. She looked at me like I was a delivery she didn't order. Oh, that was it. Just oh. I didn't smile, didn't react, just stood there. Hey, Chloe. She leaned against the doorframe, blocking the entrance without making it obvious. You didn't call. I told Mom I was getting discharged this week. She shrugged, took a sip of her wine. Yeah, well, things changed. I glanced past her into the house. New furniture, open layout, everything staged like a real estate listing. What happened to the locks? She smiled. No, it's ours. She shook her head slowly like she was correcting a child. Not anymore. I waited. Our parents signed the deed over to me last month. Clean transfer. Totally legal. My grip tightened slightly on the folder, but my voice stayed level. Why? She took another sip. Calm, casual. Vance needed collateral. Collateral for what? She smiled wider this time. His startup. Defense contracting. It's actually doing really well. I processed that in silence. You used the house as leverage. We used it, she corrected. And it worked. She set her wine glass down on the entry table and folded her arms. You're 34, Morgan. Still calm. I'm not running a charity ward for wounded vets. The words were clean, practiced. My sister always told me I was too rigid, too obsessed with the rules. I kept my eyes on the front entrance. She didn't understand that the rules are what keep you out of federal. Not warm, just controlled. We updated a few things. Why wasn't I told? She let out a short breath through her nose like I'd asked something boring. Because it's my house, Morgan. I didn't move. We're on track to land a major contract. I nodded once. And I wasn't informed because, she tilted her head. Because you've been gone, Morgan. You don't exactly contribute to decisions around here. That landed exactly how she intended. I didn't react. I shifted my weight slightly. The brace pressed back, reminding me not to push it. I need a place to stay. Just temporary. She didn't answer right away. My disability payments are still processing. I just need 30 days. I'll take my old room. I won't get in your way. She stared at me for a second. Then she laughed. Sharp, quick, like she'd been waiting for that line. You're serious, I didn't respond. Sleep in your truck. Silence sat between us for a second. I looked past her one more time. Same walls, different ownership. 30 days, I said again. Not louder, not softer, just steady. She picked up her glass, took a slow sip, and stepped back. For half a second, I thought she might move aside. She didn't. Good luck out there. Then she pushed the door closed. The deadbolt clicked. Heavy, final, I stood there. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, no anger, no shock, just clarity. I turned around, walked back down the driveway, and felt the slight drag in my leg with each step. Not dramatic, just there, a reminder. I reached my truck, opened the door, and set the duffel bag inside. The folder went on the passenger seat. I climbed in slowly, adjusted myself against the seat, and closed the door. The interior was quiet. I reached into the back and pulled out my laptop. Matte black. No logos, no distractions. I powered it on. The screen lit up. Secure login, encryption handshake. I rested my hands on the keyboard for a second. Chloe thought this was simple. She thought I was the problem that had already been removed. She thought I had no leverage. That was her first mistake. Before I logged in, I looked up at the house one more time through the windshield. Lights on, movement inside, life going on like nothing happened. I exhaled slowly. Have you ever come home expecting a place to land, only to realize you were never part of the plan? Have you ever been treated like a burden by the same people you carried for years? Tell me what you would have done in that moment. And if you understand exactly why I didn't knock on that door again, hit subscribe. I kept my eyes on the laptop screen as the system finished its secure boot sequence. No hesitation, no second guessing, just work. I didn't go far. About 20 minutes out near the edge of town, where the streetlights get sparse and the businesses stop pretending. The motel sign showed up first. Half the letters were out. The neon buzzed like it had something to say but couldn't finish the sentence. VACNCY. Close enough. I parked under a flickering light and stepped out. The cold air hit my back the wrong way, sharp. It always did now. I adjusted my jacket and walked inside. The lobby smelled like stale bleach and old carpet. Not dirty, just tired. The guy behind the counter didn't look up at first. When he did, his eyes paused on the way I stood. People notice posture before anything else. Need a room, yeah? 1 bed or 2? 1. He nodded, typed slow, like time wasn't a factor in his life. 45 a night, cash or card. He slid the form over. I filled it out. Name, no hesitation. He handed me a key, not a card. A key. Attached to a piece of plastic the size of a TV remote. End of the row. Room 12. I nodded once and walked back out. The door to the room stuck for a second before it opened. Inside was exactly what I expected. Dim light, thin curtains, a bed that looked like it had seen more stories than it should have. Small table, 1 chair, bathroom door slightly open. I set the duffel bag down and closed the door behind me. Silence again. I reached under my jacket and started unbuckling the brace. Slow, careful. The first release always felt like pressure leaving a sealed container. Then came the second. Then the third. Each strap loosened and with it the support holding everything in place. By the time I pulled it off, my back felt exposed, not weak, just unprotected. I sat down on the edge of the bed and leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Let my body adjust. Pain didn't spike. It settled, dull, constant, manageable. I stood back up after a minute and set the brace on the chair. Then I opened my laptop again. Chloe saw a discharged soldier with a bad back. That was her second mistake. I logged into a network that didn't care about appearances. Credentials, clearance, that's what mattered. I had both. Top secret. SCI, active. Most people hear that and think it's a badge. It's not. It's access. And access in the right system is currency. But clearance alone doesn't pay bills. I opened a folder buried 3 layers deep. Not hidden, just organized. Aegis Solutions, LLC, registered 3 years ago. Back when I was still planning for the exit, nobody thinks we'll come early. The company had no employees, no office, no marketing. What it did have was something most startups spend years trying to get. A vetted facility clearance, FCL code, clean, active status pending reactivation. In the defense world, that's not just paperwork. That's a gate key. Without it, you don't get in the room. Doesn't matter how good your idea is. I started the process. Forms, updates, verification requests. No rush, just precision. Every entry checked twice. Every timestamp logged. I didn't call anyone, didn't announce anything. Silence is underrated. The first night I worked until my eyes started to blur. Then I shut the laptop, lay back on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. The neon light outside flickered through the curtains. On, off, on, off. I slept in short intervals. Nothing deep. Second day, I woke up early. Black coffee from the vending machine. Tasted like it had been filtered through cardboard. Didn't matter, I logged back in. More forms. Federal systems don't move fast, but they move consistently if you know where to push. By the end of the second day, Aegis Solutions was no longer dormant. It was active, operational, visible. Third day, I made the move that mattered. I submitted a proposal, small, clean, remote consulting, cyber logistics analysis. Nothing flashy, just useful. By late afternoon, I got the response. Approved. $15,000 a month. Remote. No office required. No overhead. I read the number once, didn't react. Just closed the email and logged the contract. No one needed to know. Not Chloe, not my parents, not yet. I leaned back in the chair and let the room settle around me. Same flickering light, same stale smell, different position. My phone buzzed on the table, unknown number. I picked it up and glanced at the screen. A message from my mother. I opened it. The bank is asking about the second mortgage. Tell Vance he needs to close the DoD contract this week or we lose the house. I stared at it for a second. No greeting, no context, because it wasn't meant for me. Wrong recipient. I checked the thread. She thought she was texting Chloe. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Second mortgage. That explained the urgency. They didn't just transfer the house. They leveraged it. Everything on the line. I set the phone down slowly. Chloe had made a move. Big, confident. My parents backed it. Quietly, completely. They bet everything on Vance's startup landing that contract. And now the bank was calling. I opened my laptop again. Not to work, just to think. Defense contracts don't move on hope. They move on compliance, clearance, sponsorship, verification. Without those deals, don't close. Simple system. I leaned back and looked at the ceiling again. They weren't just in trouble, they were on a timeline. I picked up the phone one more time and reread the message. This week. 7 days. Maybe less, depending on when the process started. I closed the laptop. Not slowly, not dramatically, just enough to end the thought. They had built everything on something they didn't fully understand. That was their third mistake. And for the first time since I stood on that porch, I felt something shift. Not anger, not satisfaction, just clarity. My family wasn't stable. They were standing on a financial landmine. And the timer had already started ticking. I let the message sit on my phone for a full minute before I locked the screen. Then I opened my laptop again. Not to act, not yet, just to confirm what I already knew. Sterling Tech. I typed it in, pulled up the public filings, cross-referenced the contract notices. It didn't take long. They weren't subtle. Startups like that never are. Preliminary award. Defense logistics. $3.2 million. I leaned back in the chair. So that's what the house bought them. I could picture it without being there. Chloe never did anything halfway. If there was a win, she turned it into a performance. And sure enough, I didn't have to imagine for long. People post everything. A quick search. A tagged photo, location data, high-end steakhouse downtown, private room, low lighting, expensive plates that look better than they taste. Chloe was in the center of it, different dress. Same posture, glass in hand, head tilted just enough to show she knew exactly where the camera was. Tech wife. I could read it off her lips in one of the short clips someone posted. She laughed at something one of her friends said. Not real laughter, controlled, timed. Vance sat next to her, leaning into conversation, shaking hands, nodding like he'd already made it. I watched for a few seconds, then closed the tab. Didn't need to see more. I knew that world. Celebrating a contract before it's secured is like celebrating a check before it clears. Amateur move. About 2 hours later, my phone buzzed again. Not a message this time. Just a quiet alert from a monitoring feed I kept running in the background. Public contract updates. Sterling Tech. I opened it. Automated email issued from the Department of Defense. Standard language. Clean formatting. Requirement notice. To finalize the contract and release initial funding, the contractor must provide a sponsor facility clearance code. Cage code tied to an active TSCI clearance holder. Submission deadline 7 business days. I read it once, then again, no reaction, just confirmation. They didn't have clearance. Of course they didn't. You don't just build that overnight. It takes time, vetting, oversight, paperwork most people don't even know exists. I closed the email and sat still for a second. Somewhere across town, that same notification was hitting Vance's phone. Different reaction. I didn't need to see it to know how it played out. The phone buzzes on the table. He glances at it expecting something routine, opens it, reads the first line, then the second. His posture changes. Slight shift, not dramatic, just enough. Chloe notices. What is it? He doesn't answer right away. Reads it again, slower this time. Then he shows her. The conversation around them keeps going for a second. Laughter, glasses clinking, someone making a toast. Then it starts to fade. Because panic doesn't stay quiet for long. What does that mean, Chloe asks. It means we need a sponsor. We have a sponsor. No, we have a contract. That's not the same thing, her smile tightens. So get one. It's not that simple. It can't be that hard, Vance. You said everything was lined up. I didn't think they'd require an external FCL sponsor this early. That's when the room shifts. Not physically, just the energy. Chloe leans in, voice lower now. So what happens if we don't? He doesn't answer right away. Because he knows the answer. And he knows she's not going to like it. The contract gets voided. Silence. And the loan, he exhales once. It defaults. $400,000 tied to a house that doesn't belong entirely to them. I could almost hear the math clicking into place in her head. Image, status, stability, all of it tied to a deadline she didn't see coming. They didn't finish dinner, didn't stay for dessert, didn't close out the night with speeches or photos. They left. Quick exit. Excuses thrown over shoulders. Urgency replacing confidence in real time. I didn't watch it happen. I didn't need to, because I knew what came next. They got home and went straight to work. No break. No pause. Laptops open. Phones out. Search queries. Federal registries. Contractor databases. Anyone with an active clearance and a valid facility clearance code in their region. 7 days isn't time to negotiate. It's time to scramble. 14 hours. That's how long it took. I tracked the activity passively. Public access points, registry hits, nothing illegal, just observation. They went through every option. Large firms, too slow. Mid-size contractors already tied up. Independent operators, rare, very rare. By the end of it, exhaustion would have set in, eyes dry, tempers short, desperation creeping in. That's when Vance would have found it. One listing, clean, active. Independent, LLC, tri-state area. He prints it. Paper instead of screen. Because something about seeing it physically makes it real. He grabs a marker, highlights the line. Name of the company, Aegis Solutions, owner. He reads it out loud, Morgan Hayes. I stared at my laptop screen as the registry updated with another access log. Then I closed it. Somewhere across town, Chloe was staring at that same name on a printed sheet of paper. The same sister she laughed at. The same person she locked out. The same person she told to sleep in a truck. Now the only person in their entire network who could legally sponsor their clearance. I leaned back in my chair and let the silence settle. No satisfaction, no rush, just inevitability. Because at that point the situation wasn't complicated anymore. It was simple. They needed me. And for the first time in a long time, they didn't have the power to pretend they didn't. I reached for my coffee, took a slow sip, and set it back down. Across town, Chloe was still staring at that paper. And I knew exactly what was going through her head. Not guilt, not regret, just calculation. Because now she had a problem she couldn't ignore. And the only solution was the one she had already thrown out the front door. I tightened my grip on the resistance band and pulled slow and controlled until the therapist said stop. My back didn't scream anymore. It negotiated, a steady pressure that reminded me where the limits were. Again, she said. I reset my posture on the mat. Flat surface, neutral spine, everything measured. The VA clinic smelled clean in a way that didn't try too hard. Disinfectant rubber mats, faint coffee from somewhere down the hall. Fluorescent lights, no music, just movement and quiet instructions. I pulled again. 3 sets and sweat started to build under my shirt. The brace wasn't on. That was the point. Build strength without support. Controlled exposure. Good, she said. Hold that. I held it. That's when I saw them. Not directly. Reflection in the wall mirror first. 2 figures standing near the entrance. Not patients. Not staff. Too still. I let the tension release and sat up slowly. No rush. Arthur and Diane Hayes, my parents. They didn't belong in that room. Not because they weren't allowed. Because they had no reason to be there. Unless Chloe sent them, that tracked. I grabbed the towel next to me and wiped my face. Took my time, let them walk over. Diane got there first. Fast steps. Eyes already glossy. "Oh my God, Morgan." She reached for me like we were picking up a conversation we never finished. I didn't move. Arthur followed behind her, hands in his pockets, jaw tight, playing the role he always defaulted to when things got uncomfortable. The authority figure. The one who didn't ask questions, just expected compliance. Diane's voice cracked right on cue. "We've been so worried about you." I looked at her. No response. Not yet. She waited half a second. Enough time to realize I wasn't going to fill the silence for her. So she pushed forward. "Why didn't you call?" "We didn't know where you were staying, what condition you were in." She glanced at my back like noticing it now was part of the script. Arthur stepped in. "Your sister made a mistake, Morgan." There it was, straight to the point. But family is family. I stood up slowly from the mat. Careful, measured, no sudden movement. Picked up my water bottle, took a sip. "Vance needs your clearance signature today." He didn't say it like a request. He said it like a task that should already be done. "Don't be bitter." I capped the bottle and set it down. Still calm, no anger, just processing. Diane sniffed, stepped closer. "You have to understand, sweetheart. Chloe didn't mean it like that. She's under a lot of pressure right now. This contract, it's everything." I looked at her again. "She told me to sleep in my truck." Diane flinched but recovered fast. "She didn't mean that. She locked the door." Arthur exhaled through his nose like we were getting off track. "That's not the issue right now. Of course it wasn't. The issue is that your sister needs help, and you're the only one who can provide it." There it was, clean, direct. Not "how are you," not "are you okay," just function. "What can you do for us?" I picked up the towel again and wiped the back of my neck. Then I looked at Arthur. "How much was it?" He frowned slightly. "What, the second mortgage?" Silence. Diane blinked. Arthur's jaw tightened. I kept my tone flat. "How much did you take out against the house? That's not your concern." 400,000. Arthur's eyes shifted for half a second. Confirmation. I nodded once. "At what rate?" 8%. Maybe higher given the timeline. Diane's breathing picked up. "Morgan, why are you—" "You signed the deed over to Chloe, then leveraged the property for a startup that didn't have clearance in place." Arthur stepped forward. "You don't understand how these deals work." "I understand exactly how they work." I took a step closer. Not aggressive. Just enough to hold the space. "You tied a fixed asset to a variable outcome with a 7-day compliance window. They didn't respond, because there wasn't a counter to that. You bet everything on a contract that wasn't finalized." Diane's voice broke again. "We had to believe in her. She's building something." "No," I said. "You financed something." Arthur's tone hardened. "This isn't about blame. This is about fixing the problem." I nodded. "Right." I set the towel down. "The problem is you're exposed. Fully. If that contract doesn't close, the bank calls the loan." Diane stepped closer, reaching for my arm. "We will lose our home, Morgan." Her hand made contact. Light, desperate. I looked down at it, then back up at her. "No, Mom." My voice didn't change. "Chloe lost your home when she evicted me." I let that sit for a second. I'm just the one refusing to buy it back. Her grip tightened for half a second, then loosened. Arthur stared at me like he was trying to figure out where the version of me he understood went. "You're going to let this happen." "I'm not letting anything happen." I picked up my water bottle again. "I'm just not interfering." Diane shook her head. "This is your family." I held her gaze. This was my family. Silence. No raised voices. No scene. Just a line that didn't move. I turned and walked past them. Slow, steady, each step measured. The floor solid under my feet. No limp this time. Just control. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. Because I already knew how that conversation ended. They stood there for a few seconds after I left. Processing, reframing. Then they walked out, empty-handed, back to the house that wasn't stable anymore, back to Chloe. And when they got there, they told her exactly what happened. Not the full truth, not the parts that made them look careless, just the outcome. She refused. Chloe didn't ask how I was, didn't ask what I said. She didn't care about the conversation, only the result. And for the first time, the strategy she'd been using her whole life didn't work. Guilt didn't move me. Pressure didn't shift me. That's when the tone changes. Because when control fails, people don't become reasonable. They become reckless. And somewhere in that house with the clock still ticking, Chloe realized something she hadn't had to deal with before. She wasn't in control anymore. And that kind of realization doesn't lead to calm decisions. It leads to mistakes. I kept the laptop angled away from the room and my back to the wall. Habit. The coffee shop was quiet. Not empty, but close enough. Mid-morning crowd. People working. Headphones in. Low conversations. No one looking for trouble. That's why I picked it. I sat near the corner, one outlet, one chair across from me, nothing behind me except brick. Black coffee. No sugar. Same as always. The secure connection held steady. Files loaded clean. Logistics data. Nothing I couldn't handle from a distance. I worked in silence. No distractions. No urgency. Just structure. That's when the door opened harder than it needed to. I didn't look up right away. You learn to read rooms without reacting. Volume changes. Movement patterns. People stop talking for a fraction of a second when something enters that doesn't belong. That happened. Heels on tile, fast, direct. I glanced up. Chloe, different outfit, same intent. She didn't scan the room, didn't hesitate, came straight toward me. That meant she already knew I was there. I closed the file on my screen but didn't shut the laptop. She stopped at the table and just stood there for a second like she wanted an audience before she started. Then she got it. A couple of people looked up. Phones stayed down, for now. She took a breath, then raised her voice. How can you do this to your own family? There it was, not a conversation, a performance. I didn't respond. She stepped closer, hands on the table. You're extorting my husband's business just because you're jealous. A few heads turned. Someone near the counter shifted in their seat. I reached forward and closed the laptop. Calm, no rush, set it aside. Still didn't stand. Still didn't raise my voice. You tracked me here, I said. Flat, direct. She laughed once. Sharp. Oh, don't act like you're hiding. You've been sitting here like you're untouchable. I looked at her. You used a location tag from someone else's post. Her smile faltered for half a second, then came back. So what? I needed to find you. You won't answer your phone. You won't return messages. I don't take calls that aren't relevant. That landed. She leaned in closer. This is relevant. You're holding up a federal contract. No, I said. I'm not involved in your contract. Her voice went louder. Yes, you are. You're refusing to sponsor it. Now people were watching. Phones started to come out. She wanted that. Public pressure, shame, same strategy, bigger stage. I picked up my coffee, took a slow sip and set it back down. Then I spoke. Same tone. Same pace. Sterling Tech does not have the required internal security protocols to handle Department of Defense data. She blinked. Didn't expect that angle, I continued. Your husband's company lacks clearance infrastructure. No established chain of custody controls, no verified personnel vetting pipeline. Her jaw tightened. That's not your concern. It becomes my concern, if my clearance is attached to it. I leaned back slightly in the chair, still calm, still measured. Sponsoring your company without proper compliance would constitute a false statement under federal law. I paused just long enough. 18 U.S.C. Section 1001. A guy 2 tables over stopped typing. Another person lifted their phone higher. Chloe's face shifted. Not confusion, frustration. You're just hiding behind rules. No, I said. I'm following them. She laughed again, but it didn't land the same. You think you're better than us because you wore a uniform? I think consequences apply to everyone. That hit harder. Her voice sharpened. You're ruining everything we built. You built it on a deadline you didn't understand. Silence, not complete, just enough. People were listening now, not to her, to me. That changed the dynamic. She felt it. That's when control slipped. You're jealous, she said again louder. That's what this is. You couldn't make it work, so now you're trying to tear us down. I didn't react, didn't correct her, just let the statement sit in the air where everyone could hear how thin it sounded. She grabbed the edge of the table. You think you're so smart. Sitting here in some cheap coffee shop acting like you're above everything. I looked at her. You're on day 5. That stopped her. Of a 7-day compliance window, I added. Her expression froze, because now she knew I knew, which means you have 2 days left. No response. You don't have a backup sponsor. Still nothing. You don't have internal clearance. Her breathing changed. You don't have leverage. That was the one. Her hand moved before her brain caught up. She grabbed my coffee and threw it across the table. Liquid hit the wall. Missed the laptop by inches. A few people gasped. Someone said something under their breath. Phones were definitely up now. Chloe's voice snapped. You're nothing but a crippled veteran. There it was. Raw, unfiltered. You'll sign it, or I'll make sure you get nothing from the estate. I looked down at my jacket. Looked. A drop of coffee near the sleeve. I wiped it off with 2 fingers. Then looked back up at her. You already gave me nothing, Chloe. I paused. Let the room hear it. I'll quiet. Now I'm returning the favor. Silence. Not awkward. Final. She stood there for a second like she wanted to say more, but there wasn't anything left that wouldn't make it worse, so she turned, fast. Heels sharp against the floor. Door opened, closed harder than before. The room stayed quiet for a few seconds after she left. Then the noise came back, low, controlled, like nothing wanted to escalate further. I picked up my laptop and reopened it. Connection still secure, work still there, unchanged. I didn't look around, didn't acknowledge the phones, didn't need to, because the conversation that mattered wasn't in that room anymore. It was already moving somewhere else, out in the parking lot, inside her car. She slammed the door. I could picture it. Hands shaking, breathing uneven, phone in her hand before the engine even started. She called Vance, told him I refused. No spin, no control left, just the result. Silence on the other end for a second. Then his voice, tighter now, focused in a different way. We have 2 days. She said something, fast, frustrated. He cut her off. We have her SSN. Her old military ID scans are still in the safe. Pause. We don't need her to say yes. Another pause. We just need the system to think she did. And just like that, the line they hadn't crossed yet was gone. I set the laptop aside and let the room go quiet. 2 days left. That's when people stop pretending they have options. They don't. They just start choosing which line they're willing to cross. I didn't need to be in that house to know what it looked like that night. Glass dining table. Clean, minimal. Everything in place like control still existed. It didn't. Chloe would have been pacing, phone in her hand, not texting, waiting. Vance sitting across from her laptop, open tab stacked systems running in the background. No music, no conversation that wasn't necessary, just pressure. Say it again, she would have said. Vance didn't look up right away. We don't need her consent. How? He tapped the keyboard a few times, pulled up a document. Because the system verifies the submission, not the intent. That's the kind of sentence that sounds smart until it's used in a federal investigation. Chloe stepped closer. You're sure no, he said. Honest for once. But it's the only path left. Silence. Then the shift. Not hesitation. Commitment. Do it. That's all it takes. Not a long speech. Not a breakdown. Just a decision made under pressure by people who think consequences are optional. Vance stood up and walked to the hallway. The safe wasn't hidden. It never had to be. Family trust is the easiest thing to exploit. He opened it. Keypad, quick code, inside documents, passports, old tax files, and a folder that shouldn't have still been there, mine. He pulled it out, flipped it open. Scans, copies, old military, ID, personal data. Everything they didn't earn but had access to. He brought it back to the table, set it down. Chloe sat across from him and looked at it like it was just another task. What do you need? He turned the laptop toward her. Sponsorship agreement template. I'll populate the data. You handle the signature. She smiled slightly. That part didn't intimidate her. Of course it didn't. I've been signing her name since middle school. She said it like a joke. It wasn't. Vance started typing. Fields filled in. Company names, clearance codes, Aegis Solutions. My company, my clearance. Used without permission. Chloe pulled a pen from the drawer. Not rushed, not shaky, steady, practiced. She adjusted the paper once, aligned it with the edge of the table, then signed. Morgan Hayes, clean, accurate, illegal. Vance scanned it, uploaded it into the system. DCSA portal, secure interface, multiple steps, verification prompts. He passed each one, because he had the data. Because the system doesn't know intent, only inputs. He clicked submit. They both stared at the screen. 1 second, 2. Then it appeared. Green checkmark. Submission accepted. Chloe exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. That's it. He leaned back in his chair. We're in. They looked at each other. Relief hit first, then excitement. Then something close to arrogance. Because in their minds, they didn't just solve the problem, they beat the system. Chloe stood up, walked to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of champagne. Didn't even check the label, just popped it. The sound echoed in the house, too loud for the moment. They didn't care. $3.2 million. Secured. That's what they thought. They poured drinks, clinked glasses, celebrated a win that didn't exist. Across town, I was asleep. Or at least, I was trying to be. The motel room was dark, except for the neon light bleeding through the curtains. On, off, on, off. My back ached in that low, constant way that never fully goes away. I shifted once, then stopped. That's when the phone lit up. Not a normal notification. Red. I opened my eyes immediately. No hesitation, no confusion. That phone only lights up like that for one reason. I reached over, picked it up, and unlocked it. 2:14 a.m., automated alert, Department of Defense Security portal. I read the message once, then again. Notification facility clearance sponsorship successfully submitted for Sterling Tech. I didn't move, didn't sit up, just stared at the screen. They actually did it. Not just pressure, not just manipulation. They crossed into federal territory, identity theft, wire fraud, forgery of a federal defense document. All in one move, using my name, my clearance, my record. I sat up slowly. The room didn't change. Same flickering light, same stale air, different reality. Most people would panic at that moment. Call, text, demand answers. I didn't. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a crime. Clear, documented, time-stamped. I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not even satisfaction. Clarity. The kind that comes when every variable lines up. They didn't just try to use me, they made it official. I swung my legs off the bed and stood up. Careful, balanced. The pain was there, but it stayed in the background. I picked up the laptop and opened it. Pulled the logs, verified the submission. Everything matched the alert. No doubt, no error. I closed the laptop, reached for the phone again, scrolled past Chloe's name, past my parents. No contact. No warning. Because this wasn't a family conversation anymore. It was a federal matter. I opened a different contact. Not saved with a name, just a number, direct line. Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. Investigator. I held the phone for half a second. Not thinking, just confirming. Then I pressed call and let it ring. I sat across from the agent and placed the encrypted drive on the table. No speech, no build-up, just evidence. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Neutral walls, no decoration, a table that didn't invite conversation. 2 chairs, 1 camera in the corner that wasn't hidden. Special Agent Harris didn't rush. He picked up the drive, connected it to his system, and started reviewing the files. I didn't talk while he worked. Didn't need to. The logs spoke for themselves. Time-stamped access records, system authentication trails, device signatures. Every interaction tied to my credentials over the last 72 hours. Clean, consistent, untouched. Except for one entry. 2:14 a.m., submission logged. Not from my device, not from my location. He paused there, zoomed in, cross-checked. Where were you at this time, he asked. Asleep, I said. Motel on Route 9. Room 12. He nodded once. Anyone with you know. You have proof of location. I checked in under my name. Security camera at the front desk. Key log shows no exit between midnight and 6. He typed something, then looked back at the screen. And your system offline at that time. No active session. Looking for hesitation, inconsistency. Didn't find any. Because there wasn't any. This isn't a civil dispute, he said finally. No, I replied. It's a breach of federal clearance protocol. Yes. He nodded again. Slow, measured. Then he closed the file and looked directly at me. Do you understand the implications of what you're reporting I do? Forgery tied to a top-secret clearance isn't just fraud. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I stayed where I was, hands on the table, back straight, no movement. This part doesn't require emotion, it requires patience. Across town, they weren't sitting in a room like this. They were celebrating. Sterling Tech's office had glass walls, open layout, clean branding, everything designed to look bigger than it was. Catered food lined the tables. Trays of steak sides, desserts no one needed. Music played low, just enough to fill the space. Chloe stood near the center again. Same posture. Same control she thought she had back. Vance moved between people, shaking hands, accepting congratulations like he earned them. Arthur raised a glass. To Vance he said. Back in the office, Agent Harris walked back in. He didn't sit down. We're moving forward, he said. I nodded once. No questions, no hesitation. He gathered the drive his notes and headed for the door again. You'll be contacted if we need anything else. I'll be available. He gave a short nod. Then he left. I stood up slowly, adjusted my posture, and walked out of the building. No rush, no urgency, because everything that needed to happen was already in motion. By the time I got to my truck, they were already assembling. 6 agents, 2 vehicles, standard procedure, no sirens, no warning. They don't announce themselves when the evidence is clean. They just show up. Back at Sterling Tech, the music cut off mid-song, not because someone turned it down, because the doors opened. Hard, not slammed, controlled force. 6 agents stepped inside, windbreakers, badges visible. The room froze. And once you see that clearly, you stop trying to compete for a position that was never open. You step out of the system entirely. That's what I did. Not out of anger. No remote access authorized. He leaned back slightly, not relaxed, just processing. This signature, he said, pulling up the document. That's not yours. No, you've never authorized a sponsorship for Sterling Tech, no. He studied my face for a second. It's a national security issue. I know. He held my gaze for another second. Then he reached for his phone. Sit tight, that's all he said. He stepped out of the room, foreseeing the opportunity and making it real. Diane smiled beside him, proud, relieved. They all looked like people who believed the problem was solved, because from their perspective it was. The system accepted the submission. The checkmark turned green. That's all they needed. They didn't understand what that checkmark actually meant. It wasn't approval, it was a trigger. People didn't move right away, because their brains hadn't caught up to what they were seeing. Vance did. His hand tightened around the champagne glass, then loosened. It slipped, hit the floor, shattered. That's what broke the silence. Chloe turned toward the entrance. Her expression didn't change immediately. She didn't understand yet. Agent Harris walked in last, calm, direct. He didn't look around the room. He walked straight toward them. Vance Sterling, Chloe Sterling. No raised voice, no drama, just identification. They didn't respond, not verbally, but their posture changed. Subtle, immediate. You are under investigation for federal wire fraud and forgery of classified government documents. The words landed clean, no confusion, no room to reinterpret. Diane's hand went to her mouth. Arthur didn't move, just stared. Chloe blinked once, then shook her head. This is a mistake. Agent Harris didn't react. You will need to come with us. Vance looked around the room like someone might step in. No one did. Because this wasn't a situation you argue your way out of. This was already decided. Chloe's voice rose. Who authorized this? No answer. Who made this call? She stepped forward. This is harassment. You can't just walk in here. Agent Harris stepped slightly to the side. Not dramatic. Just enough. And that's when she saw me, standing in the hallway, leaning on my cane. Not because I had to, because it made the stance cleaner, more controlled. My face didn't change. No anger, no satisfaction, just stillness. She stared at me, trying to process, trying to reframe, trying to find a version of this where she was still in control. There wasn't one. Because this time, the system didn't bend for her. I shifted my weight slightly and watched it unfold. No interference, no reaction, just observation. That's the part most people don't understand about consequences. Once they start, they don't need help. They run on their own. Vance spoke first. Fast. Too fast. This is a misunderstanding. I handled the paperwork. Chloe didn't. Chloe snapped her head toward him. What are you doing? He didn't look at her. I submitted the form. I thought everything was cleared. You told me it was fine. I said it might work. You said it was handled. The agents didn't interrupt. They let it play out. Because when people panic, they clarify things better than any interrogation ever could. Chloe turned back toward Agent Harris. This is ridiculous. We had authorization. The system accepted it. The system logs submissions, Harris said. It does not verify intent. That line hit harder the second time. Vance stepped forward. I can fix this. We can withdraw the submission. There's no need to escalate. It's already escalated. 2 agents moved closer, positioning, not aggressive, just controlled. Chloe's voice shifted, from anger to fear, Morgan, she said. I didn't move. She took a step toward me before an agent stopped her. Please, tell them it was a misunderstanding. Her tone changed again, softer now, familiar. The version she used when she needed something. We're sisters. That word didn't carry weight anymore. Not after the door. Not after the lock. Not after the silence that followed. I looked at her. No emotion, no hesitation. You told me to sleep in my truck, Chloe. I let that sit. The room stayed quiet. At least federal prison has beds. No one laughed. No one moved. Because that wasn't a joke. It was the cleanest translation of what just happened. The agents stepped in. One took Vance's arm. The other positioned behind Chloe. Standard procedure. Turn around. Metal clicked. First Vance, then Chloe. Handcuffs. Real, final. Diane started crying again, not controlled this time. Arthur didn't say anything. He just stood there watching everything he signed off on collapse in front of him. No speech, no authority left, just consequence. They separated Chloe and Vance before moving them out. Different directions, different vehicles. Because once it reaches that level, even partners become liabilities to each other. Chloe looked back one last time as they walked her past me. No anger left, just something closer to confusion, like she still didn't understand how it got this far. I didn't say anything else, didn't need to, because the explanation had already been given, clear, simple, ignored. The doors closed behind them. The room stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then people started moving again, slowly, like the air had shifted. I turned and walked out the same way I came in. No one stopped me. No one asked questions, because I wasn't part of the scene anymore. I was just the reason it happened. 3 weeks later, the system finished what it started. The contract was revoked, not delayed, not renegotiated, gone. $3.2 million reduced to a record of attempted fraud. The loan didn't wait, it never does. Without the contract, there was no incoming capital, no buffer, no recovery plan. The bank moved in, foreclosure process started fast. They don't care about stories, just numbers. Arthur and Diane didn't fight it, they couldn't. Everything was tied up in that one decision. They packed what they could, left the house they thought they secured, moved into a small apartment across town, 2 bedrooms, low ceiling, thin walls, no space for performance, no room for denial, just reality. Chloe and Vance weren't there. They had their own situation to deal with. Federal charges don't move fast, but they move forward. Every day, every document, every hearing, structured, unavoidable. I didn't follow the details, didn't need updates. Because once something enters that system, the outcome isn't emotional, it's procedural. And procedures don't care about family, they care about violations. I moved on, not dramatically, not all at once, just step by step. The consulting contract held. $15,000 a month, clean work, remote, controlled, no overhead, no noise. I found a place. Not big, not flashy, but mine. Townhouse on a quiet street. 2 floors, clean lines, solid structure, no shared history, no assumptions, just space. I stood on the balcony the first morning after I moved in, black coffee in my hand, same as before. The air was different. Still, no tension, no waiting, my back still hurt. That didn't change. Some things don't, but I stood straight anyway, because pain and stability aren't the same thing. I took a slow sip and looked out over the street. People going to work, cars passing by, normal, quiet, exactly what I wanted. I rested my hand on the railing and let the moment settle. No rush to fill it, no need to justify it, just clarity. Then I looked forward, not at anything specific, just ahead. Blood doesn't make you family, I said. My voice stayed level. Respect does. I took another sip. If someone locks you out in the cold, don't break the door down to get back in. I paused. Let them sit in the house until it burns. No anger in it, just fact. If you've ever had to walk away from toxic family to protect your own peace. I let the sentence hang for a second. You're not alone. I set the cup down on the railing. And you're not the villain. A small pause. Hit subscribe. I picked the cup back up. I'll see you in the next story. I stayed on that balcony longer than I needed to. Not because I was thinking about them, because I was thinking about what I used to believe. The quiet out here was different. No tension in it, no waiting for the next problem, just space. And that space gave me something I didn't have for a long time: perspective. I used to think family meant obligation, no conditions, no limits. You show up, you help, you carry more than your share because that's what you're supposed to do. That belief sounds good when you say it out loud. It sounds loyal, strong, selfless. But in practice, it can turn you into the easiest person in the room to take advantage of. I didn't learn that all at once. It was slow, small things first. Let Chloe have it. She's younger. Don't argue. It's not worth it. Be the bigger person. That phrase gets used a lot. Most people don't realize what it actually means in certain families. It doesn't mean maturity. It means silence. It means you absorb the damage so no one else has to deal with it. And over time, that becomes your role. You're the one who adjusts. You're the one who tolerates. You're the one who fixes things no one else wants to take responsibility for. And the longer you stay in that role, the harder it is to step out of it. Because people don't just get used to your behavior, they start depending on it. That's how systems like that survive. Not because one person is powerful, but because everyone else keeps playing their part. My parents didn't see themselves as the problem. They thought they were supporting Chloe, helping her build something, believing in her. That's what they told themselves. But support without accountability turns into enablement. And enablement doesn't look aggressive. It looks quiet. It looks like signatures on documents. Decisions made behind closed doors. Conversations you're not included in. Because your role is already defined. I wasn't the one they needed to invest in. I was the one they assumed would be fine no matter what. That's another dangerous idea. The strong one in the family. The one who doesn't need help. The one who can handle anything. That label doesn't protect you. It isolates you. Because it gives everyone permission to give you less. Less support. Less consideration. Less respect. And eventually, less truth. When I stood on that porch and saw the new lock, that wasn't the moment everything changed. That was the moment everything became visible. The decision had already been made. The paperwork had already been signed. The house had already been transferred. I was just the last person to find out. That's what made it clear. I wasn't part of the system anymore. I was outside of it. And here's the part that took me the longest to accept. That wasn't a loss. It was exposure. Because once you're outside of a toxic system, you can finally see it for what it is. Not what you hoped it would be. Not what it pretended to be. But what it actually runs on. Control, expectation, unspoken rules that only apply to certain people. Walking away from that doesn't feel strong at first. It feels like failure. Like you gave up. Like you couldn't fix it. But that feeling comes from the same belief that kept you stuck in the first place. That it was your job to fix it. It wasn't. It never was. You can't fix a system that benefits from staying broken. You can only remove yourself from it. And that's where most people hesitate. Because walking away from strangers is easy. Walking away from family feels like betrayal, even when they've already crossed every line. Even when they've already shown you exactly where you stand. You still feel like you owe them something. That's the lie. You don't owe anyone access to you just because you share a last name. You don't owe loyalty to people who only value you when you're useful. And you don't owe silence to keep a system comfortable at your expense. Those ideas sound harsh until you've lived through the alternative. Until you've stood outside a locked door, realizing that everything you gave didn't secure you a place inside. That's when the shift happens. Not dramatic, not loud, just a decision. I'm done negotiating for basic respect. That's it. No speech, no announcement. Just a line you stop crossing. And once you make that decision, something changes. Not in them. In you, you stop explaining. You stop justifying. You stop trying to make your experience easier for them to accept. Because you realize something simple. They already understood. They just didn't care. And that's the part people struggle with. Accepting that it wasn't confusion, it was choice. They chose convenience over fairness. They chose image over truth. They chose Chloe. Over and over again, out of clarity. And if you're listening to this right now and something about it feels familiar, then you're probably standing at that same line. Not a physical door, but a decision. Stay in a system that expects you to tolerate more than you should. Or walk away and build something that doesn't require you to shrink. That choice isn't easy, but it is simple. Because at the end of it, There's only one question that matters. Are you staying because it's right? Or because it's familiar? I finished my coffee and set the cup down on the railing. The street below kept moving, people going to work, cars passing by, normal, uncomplicated. I didn't miss what I left behind. Not the house, not the roles, not the version of me that stayed quiet just to keep things stable. Because stability built on imbalance doesn't last. It just delays the collapse. And when it finally comes, it doesn't ask who deserves it, it just happens. The only difference is whether you're still standing inside when it does. I rinsed the cup in the sink and set it upside down on the rack. No rush. That's the part people don't see. The space between events, the time where nothing looks like it's happening, that's where decisions get made. A lot of people watched what happened and called it revenge. They think I planned it, that I set a trap, that I waited for the right moment to take them down. I didn't. I didn't need to. There's a difference between reacting to someone and letting them reveal who they are. Most people don't give others enough time to do that. They jump in too early, they argue, they explain. They try to correct behavior that was never meant to change. I've done that before. It doesn't work. Because people who benefit from crossing your boundaries don't respond to logic. They respond to consequences. And if you keep stepping in to soften those consequences, they never learn anything. When Chloe shut that door, I had options. I could have called the police. I could have threatened legal action over the property. I could have forced a confrontation right there on the porch. All of that would have felt justified. All of it would have been loud, and none of it would have solved the real problem. Because the real problem wasn't the door, it was the pattern behind it. And patterns don't break from arguments. They break when the outcome changes. So I did something most people struggle with. I stepped back. Not emotionally, strategically. I focused on my position, my resources, my leverage. And I kept it quiet. That's another mistake people make. They announce their moves. They warn the other side. They try to be understood before they act. All that does is give the other person time to adjust, time to protect themselves, time to create a new version of the story where they still come out on top. Silence doesn't just protect you, it limits their options. While they were focused on appearances, I was focused on structure, clearance, contracts, documentation, things that don't respond to emotion. Things that don't change based on who's louder. That's where real control lives, not in conversations, in systems. When they came to me asking for the signature, I could have negotiated, put conditions on it, asked for access to the house again, forced an apology. That's what most people would have done, turn it into a transaction. But that would have kept me inside the same system, still reacting to them, still letting their needs define my actions. I wasn't interested in that anymore. So I said no, clean. No explanation beyond what was necessary. No emotional framing, just facts. They weren't compliant. Sponsoring them would have been illegal. End of discussion. That's where the situation split. One path was still available to them. Walk away, accept the loss, take responsibility. They didn't choose that. They chose the other path, the one where they believed they could bypass the system. That's the moment everything changed. Not because I did something, because they did. Forgery isn't a misunderstanding, it's a decision. Uploading a federal document under someone else's clearance isn't a mistake. It's a calculated risk. And once they took that step, they handed control over to something bigger than both of us. That's the part people miss. I didn't win because I outplayed them. I won because I didn't interfere with the consequences of their own choices. I didn't stop them. I didn't warn them. I didn't protect them from the outcome. And that feels uncomfortable for a lot of people. Because we're taught to prevent damage, to step in, to fix things before they get worse. But sometimes stepping in is exactly what keeps the problem alive. Sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is nothing. Not out of neglect, out of clarity. You recognize the pattern, you recognize the trajectory, and you step out of the way. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you accurate. There's another piece to this. Timing. If I had reported them when they insulted me, nothing would have happened. No case, no violation, just a personal dispute. If I had reported them when they pressured me, same outcome. No legal standing, just conflict. But when they forged the document, everything changed. Now there was evidence. Now there was a clear violation of federal law. Now the system had something to act on. That's when I moved. Not before, not after, right when it mattered. That's not luck. That's discipline. You wait until the action matches the consequence you want enforced. And then you step in, clean, precise, documented. No emotion required. That's why I didn't need to argue in that coffee shop. That's why I didn't need to defend myself in front of anyone. Because the outcome wasn't going to be decided there. It was already moving somewhere else. People think control looks like dominance. Raising your voice, taking charge, forcing an outcome. Real control is quieter than that. It's knowing when not to engage. It's understanding where decisions are actually made. And it's being willing to wait. Even when waiting feels like losing, because most people can't do that. They need immediate resolution. They need to feel like they're doing something. That urgency is what gets them pulled back into the same cycle. I didn't need immediate resolution. I needed a permanent one. And permanent solutions don't come from emotional reactions. They come from structural consequences. That's what I let happen. Nothing more, nothing less. So if you're dealing with someone right now who keeps pushing your limits, ask yourself one thing. Are you trying to win the moment? Or are you setting up the outcome? Because those are not the same thing, and only one of them actually changes anything. I leaned on the railing and watched the street settle into its normal rhythm. That's the part no one talks about. After everything ends, life doesn't pause. It just keeps moving. And you have to decide how you're going to move with it. If you've been listening to this and thinking this feels familiar, then don't treat it like a story. Treat it like a warning. Because situations like this don't start with a locked door. They start with small patterns that get ignored. So let me be clear about what I would do if I had to go back and handle it again from the beginning. First, I would stop explaining myself to people who benefit from misunderstanding me. That's a hard one to accept. Because most people assume that if they just say it the right way, explain it clearly enough, show enough patience, the other person will finally get it. They won't. Not because they can't. Because they don't need to. Misunderstanding you gives them leverage. It lets them keep doing what they're doing without having to take responsibility. So every time you explain yourself to someone like that, you're not fixing the problem. You're feeding it. Second, separate what you feel from what you do. You're allowed to feel everything. Anger, frustration, disappointment. Those are normal, but acting from those emotions, that's where people lose control. Emotional reactions are predictable, and predictable people are easy to manipulate. If someone knows exactly how you're going to respond, they can guide the situation wherever they want. That's why I didn't react on that porch. Not because I didn't feel anything, because I understood that reacting wouldn't help me. It would help them. Third, secure your position before you make any moves. That means practical things. Money, documents, access, stability. You don't walk away from a situation like that without knowing where you're going to land. And you definitely don't announce it before you're ready. Silence gives you space to build without interference. The moment you start telling people what you're planning, they start adjusting to it. They start closing doors you haven't even reached yet, so keep it quiet. Not out of fear, out of strategy. Fourth, understand the systems around you. Legal, financial, professional. Most people lose because they think everything is personal. It's not. There are structures in place that don't care how anyone feels. They care about rules, documentation, process. My sister thought she was dealing with a family disagreement. She wasn't. She stepped into a system that runs on compliance. And once she crossed that line, the outcome was already determined. If you don't understand the system you're operating in, you're always going to be at a disadvantage, even if you're right. Fifth, stop trying to get closure from people who already showed you who they are. This one takes time, because part of you is always going to want an explanation. An apology, something that makes it make sense. But closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you deciding that their behavior already gave you the answer. They didn't respect you. They didn't consider you. They made decisions that excluded you. That's the closure. Everything else is just noise. Sixth, accept that walking away might be the only real win. Not fixing it, not changing them, walking away. That doesn't feel like winning at first. It feels like loss, like you gave up on something that mattered. But staying in a situation where you have to constantly defend your value, that's not loyalty. That's self-neglect. You don't owe anyone that. And finally, understand that peace is built, not given. No one is going to hand it to you. You create it by controlling what you allow into your life. Who has access to you? What behavior you tolerate? What lines you refuse to cross again? That's what I did. Not perfectly. Not all at once, but consistently. And that consistency is what changes everything. I didn't win because they got arrested. That was just the result of their decisions. I won the moment I stopped needing them to treat me right. Everything after that was just the system doing its job. I took a slow sip of my coffee and looked out at the street again. Same movement, same quiet, no tension, no waiting, just space. If you're standing in a situation right now where something feels off, where you're constantly adjusting just to keep things stable, pay attention to that. That's not normal. That's not something you're supposed to carry forever. You don't need permission to step out of it. You don't need agreement from anyone else. You just need to decide that you're done. And once you make that decision, don't announce it. Don't explain it. Just act on it, one step at a time. If this helped you see your situation a little clearer, stay with me. Hit subscribe, because the next story might be the one that shows you exactly what to do next.